mic out that last little bit there. All right, Citizen, welcome to another episode of Citizen Ready. As always, I am your host, Brett. And today I'm joined by Adam Swart, the founder of Crowds on Demand. And I'm very curious to learn about this because I think there might be some nefariousness behind this. But we're going to find out from the man himself. So welcome, Adam. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Brett, thanks so much for having me on your program. I hope there's no nefariousness. I like to say kind of on this to start every podcast is there's so much misinformation about Crowds on Demand that I have to stress that we only engage in legal, peaceful, respectful protests. So if you see people blocking out a street without a permit or Molotov cocktails, vandalism, violence, whatever, that has nothing to do with us. It's part of why I'm here today is to kind of rebut so much of the misinformation that's spread online, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here, and I appreciate it. I didn't mean you're being nefarious. I meant there are definitely nefarious crowds out there, and I think
yes, there
you're
are.
a great guy to talk to about this. So,
Yeah.
I mean, give me a little background on Crowds on Demand, and then we can move into like what where we are today with that.
Sure. So I've been doing this for 13 years. I started the business in college, and we've kind of we're the largest protest company in the country. What we do is we organize anything from just a simple protest to a movement, right? Like we can even build a movement from the ground up, with an advocacy group leader, phone calls, emails, websites, social media, like everything having to do with what a movement would entail. I like to say we're in the business of catalyzing movements and persuasion, right? So, and we do it not just for, political type things, but for issues, for companies that want publicity, and anything in between.
All right. Why did you start crowdsourcing?
Yeah.
No
Well,
pun intended.
so it's a funny story. So I used to work in college on a lot of political campaigns, mostly on the Democrat side, though I definitely consider myself an independent today. That one of the challenges is that just getting turnout to events was so difficult, right? Like a lot of the people running the campaigns at the time that I was involved, they were in college in the 60s, the 70s, the peak era of activism where you could put some, flyers on the quad and you'd have thousands of students turning out, right? And so they would say, I was running Southern California for different kind of campaigns, and they would be like, Adam, just get us a few thousand students, as if that was a simple request, right? And but I saw the value of turning people out, right? Because you could have an amazing speech that was delivered for 5 or 10 people and it wouldn't really have any carry, right? Imagine Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech given in front of 5 people. It wouldn't have had the same impact, right? So, conversely, if you have like maybe a less than stellar speech, but it's in front of a lot of people and you have the context, context matters a lot. So I saw the benefit of that, but then I was also living in LA, coming out of the Great Recession. What do you have in LA? A ton of out of work actors, right? So I was like, what if I put these actors to work as protesters or audience members or kind of background people? And so I did. I was like, let's just put these people to work doing that, right? And it was kind of fantastically effective. We kind of changed the business model over the last several years because the idea of kind of getting actors who don't care about an issue was sort of generating some controversy, as you could imagine. So we kind of morphed it. But at the time we started, it was basically we would take almost any issue and we would staff them with almost any people, right? So it was a little wild in the first years for that reason, because when you're starting,
what were some of the wild ones? Tell me some of the things that you've influenced.
well, almost at the start, we were very. Right now, I like to say we're not either Republican nor Democrat, but there is a cohesiveness. I like to consider myself common sense, right? Where the issues have to kind of make sense. So whether if it's like on a liberal side protecting healthcare rights, I support that. I don't think you should die because of lack of access to healthcare. Or on the
Right.
Republican side, stopping this defund the police nonsense. Like we want the police, right? Like that's it's crazy, right? So I just because one thing is conservative and one thing is liberal, they're cohesive because it's common sense. But when I started the business, that wasn't a concern as long as it wasn't direct. I couldn't take the same side of or two sides of the same issue, but other than that, all good, right? So that part is wild. And the other thing is the tactics that we used were a little tougher in the earlier days. Like one of the things that we did in the earlier days was we would protest outside people's homes. And now it's the type of thing we're trying to avoid. I mean, of course, to be clear, there's nothing illegal about protesting outside someone's home. Though some cities have made ordinances to make that a little bit more difficult. But it's just a little bit of an incendiary tactic that, like, I think makes sense. Like, to be clear, like, I would gladly protest outside Mark Zuckerberg's home or, that type of person. But if it's an ordinary person's normal suburban American home, we wouldn't necessarily want to protest there, right? Like, if it's a
So
billionaire's compound, it's different.
are you? So you're the gatekeeper. You're the decider when it comes
My
to
company,
the.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Because I mean, it does seem like it's a powerful tool you're wielding,
sure.
and that you would choose. Are there? Let me ask you this: do you have competition that is the antithesis of your goals? That
Yes,
would. Okay.
but I don't
Companies
know
that
who
will
they
pick
are.
up the other side of the fence, so to speak.
Well, no, I would say by antithesis of their goals, it's more the antithesis of my tactics. The people
Ah,
who are also doing this are people who are okay with disobeying the law and are
right.
okay blocking the streets without a permit, okay potentially doing violence. So I don't exactly know who they are, and I've offered the government, and I've actually told the government I want to track these people down. And this isn't a Republican or Democrat thing because I don't want this to end up being something that is a partisan witch hunt. I want this to be, hey, there are people on both sides of the political sides that are essentially doing illegal types of things and potentially getting money from foreign sources and doing extraordinarily nefarious things, and we need to crack down on it, and the government has not done so. So my competition is are people who basically have no ethics, no guardrails, and no
Sure.
adhesion to the law. So that's the sort of scary part is it's a little bit concerning to compete with people who have no guardrails, which I do.
So people throw George Soros's name around when it comes to riots.
Hmm.
People,
Yeah.
tend to point to Antifa
Yeah.
as kind of the violent protesters
Okay.
who, right? Would you agree or disagree?
Well, yeah. I mean, so look, I think what's interesting with those examples. So
Mm,
Antifa for sure has engaged in tactics that are illegal, right?
right.
I do oppose the designation as domestic terrorists because I think we need to be judged as individuals. So if there are members, because Antifa doesn't have a bank account, right? This is not a one organization. If they were, we could better assess what they have done and not done. But because this is an over Antifa is essentially this overriding principle that a lot of individuals and organizations subscribe to. It's important that as we understand this group and as we crack down on certain people that do bad things within their name, that
Mm.
we don't violate constitutional rights in that pursuit, right? So I think that when
Of
it comes
peaceful
to
assembly is what you're
correct,
saying. Yeah.
exactly. Because you can be someone who subscribes to the values of Antifa, right, and do so peacefully, and you can be someone who subscribes to that and does so violently. Just as you can be a member of the Proud Boys or what is it, the 3% or whatever other group that and you could be someone who kind of does that peacefully, and you could be someone who does that violently, right? And
Right.
I believe in America we need to be judged as individuals, not as collective. Um, Now, you also asked about Mr. Soros, and part of that is I think we have to understand him. I have a different take on Soros. First of
Please.
all,
Yeah.
anyone who says that they have not gotten money from Soros cannot prove that because people like Soros have an opaque funding network. So you may not have dealt with Soros directly, and I have not dealt with him directly, but he funds organizations that fund organizations that fund organizations through a web of what I call Russian dolls. So if you say you haven't been funded by Soros, my question is, can you trace exactly where your money is coming from, the original source? And the answer is no, you can't. And so therefore you cannot prove you have not received money from Soros. My theory about Soros is, if you want to call him a liberal, I think that actually misses the mark. I think he is someone who wants chaos, right? And think about where he became as wealthy as he is. It was by shorting the British currency, right? So he makes money when the currency collapses, right? That's how he made the money. That's not a Republican, Democrat, liberal, or conservative thing. It is purely chaos. So think about it this way. Now he has, of course, the open societies tends to fund these liberal prosecutors, the lefty prosecutors, who are doing what? They are making it harder to enforce the law, making our cities less safe, right? But conversely, it is important to note that one of his former top lieutenants is the Secretary of the Treasury, right? Scott Bessent is the Secretary of the Treasury, and he was a top Soros lieutenant. So to me, my question is, these are questions that need to be answered, because it seems to me that he wants this isn't to call him just a liberal is missing the mark. This is somebody who I think wants to kind of create chaos. Now my question is, there are two reasons why someone might create chaos. Number one is for money, a direct financial incentive. Now the guy's 96. Is he trying to make a couple more bucks? Possibly. Or are you trying to essentially create chaos such that an authoritarian can take power, right? Because my concern is, and that's the kind of bigger concern, right? So think about all of the great authoritarians in history. The great meaning most ruthless, to be clear.
The accomplished.
Yeah. So if you think about Adolf Hitler or Vladimir Putin, right? How did they become so powerful? It's amidst the Weimar Republic. It's amidst the end of the USSR, where there was chaos on the streets. So people are more willing to sacrifice their rights and their freedoms amidst the sea of chaos. If things are generally going well, then why are you going to let them take your rights away? But if there's complete lawlessness on the street, a lot of ordinary people might say, oh, okay, I'm willing to give up certain rights such that I can walk to the store without fearing that I'm going to get murdered, right? So this is the challenge. Is my concern about Soros, and I think that there may be other people, is that the goal isn't simply a financial motive or simply a liberal values motive. This is actually trying to create chaos, because chaos is the predicate to authoritarianism.
Very true. Yeah, I wouldn't argue with any of that. I do. I mean, Soros benefited from the Ukrainian collapse and the change over there. He brags about that. He's always been part of the chaos.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that Antifa was actually around during World War II, like pre-World War II as well. The anti-fascist movement is
they
very
actually
old.
were anti-fascist at the time. So the thing is, Antifa was actually comes from a place where they were actually combating fascism, right?
Right.
And I think, as you know, there are terms like fascist, racist, sexist, homophobe that have actually lost their meaning, because anti-Semite, they're used so much that they've become so cheapened. I mean, now people call each other pedophiles, right? Like, all these terms are just horrible things, but they've become cheapened because of overuse. So, Antifa came from the point where they were fighting actual fascists, right?
Right.
And now when they're saying, "Oh, well, Antifa doesn't want is fighting for the right of homeless people, drug addicts to camp on the street and threaten people's kids and live in the parks," right? Like, I don't think it's fascism to say you can't sleep and do drugs in public parks, right? So I think that Antifa has kind of lost their thread.
I think the whole country has lost the plot, I mean,
Yeah.
and there's always that sticks and stones break my bones, but words will never hurt me. You can call me anything you want. I'm allowed to have an opinion. And that's, I mean, to your point, everybody's just kind of dismissed other people's opinions if they don't agree with them. And yeah, they resort to name calling like they're children. So yeah, I've certainly, I agree with you on that. Where do you see I mean, so crowds on demand.
Yeah.
Where's the benefit? And let me ask you, like, when you see like a J6 crowd that, now has multiple hundred federal agents inside of it.
Okay.
You mentioned Proud Boys. We've all seen what are those feds that walk around with the white masks and the khakis on? They get out of the back of U-Hauls. We've seen those guys.
Yeah.
The crowd idea of crowd on demand is a very long and infiltrated government strategy.
Yeah.
How do you, when just randomly hire, and honestly, Donald Trump keeps referring to central casting every time he talks about members of his cabinet.
Yeah.
And I'm familiar with central casting. If people aren't, it's basically just a place where out of work actors can go to be extras or be hired for other things.
Correct.
How do you prevent the nefarious actors from showing up and infiltrating your lines? What kind of background
Very good
checks and things
question.
do you do?
Well, first of all, we interview everybody before taking part in our events. So that actually costs me money. People don't realize that my clients are not the ones demanding this. I'm the one who's demanding it. And so this is another initiative I've been doing in the past several years, and it's cost me money. Like, I can't even pass these costs on to my clients. So it costs me money to have a team of people who interviews each participant at each event for at least 15, 20 minutes to make sure, okay, they're aligned, they understand it's peaceful, respectful, everything. Even if you've worked with us in the past, we interview you before each event, just so that we make sure that you're in line with the movement, right? With what we're proposing. So that costs me money because my clients aren't willing to pay it. So because the clients are like, "Oh yeah, just get whoever," and I'm like, "Guys, this is gonna long term be bad for you to have people randos, but it's also bad for me because if I have become known as somebody who gets people who don't care about the issue or not knowledgeable, whatever, that hurts my brand." So we actually do that at great expense to make sure of the quality of our events and our campaign.
And we've seen that. I remember when the Elon Musk protests and Tesla protests were going on, they would go out and interview people, and they're like, "Why are you here? What are you passionate about?" And they don't have an answer. They've just been paid and showed up. And I mean, Kamala Harris was very much
up for the Instagram. In many cases, a lot of these people are showing up because they don't know, but they see it on Instagram or on some social media, and they just they're flexing for social media. It's like when the Real Housewives turned up to the BLM protests. Like, do you think that the Real Housewives know anything about institutional racism? Right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know. Like,
No, I like that. Go ahead. Sorry.
They just know that this is popular on social media, and they want to seem like they're with it. So that's why they went out there, right? So
what's the moral dilemma? Like having, like, with Kamala Harris specifically, this is a presidential, and the president now. I mean, I think the vote's fake and gay. I think our government is all pedophiles. I think that's pretty clear. We can all tell. We're clearly being run by Satanists. So they're all going to serve their time in the lake. But when it comes to the vote, or at least, it's very much a popularity contest.
Okay.
And someone like Kamala Harris, who they all lie. So I'm just not saying Trump is not honest. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying they all lie. But she clearly was lying. A lot of things she said were just blatantly lies or, inebriated. But there's a popularity thing that comes with this. When you see huge crowds and Beyonce is up there dancing and doing all this stuff, it visually shows others that, hey, maybe there's something I'm missing with this person, but that's not true. That's kind of a lie. What, do you have any moral thoughts or dilemmas, and where do you see, like, when it comes to these big national things that they're gonna matter who gets voted in?
Yeah.
If you have a fake crowd showing up and showing fake support for somebody who's fake, isn't that misleading and detrimental to the cause, which is like transparency and honesty when it comes to leadership, so to speak?
Well, I think that every candidate is going to try to put their campaign in the right context, right? So that part of it is
Right.
contextualizing something. So you want to show that you have a crowd because you think it'll bring energy to your campaign. But let me kind of give you two examples of why that doesn't work. And you used Kamala Harris as an example, but ultimately she completely failed, right? Like
Yep.
she did such a bad, so for
Well,
whatever
that was
you
the
might say
drugs.
about-
If she had just stopped doing drugs and alcohol and could actually speak normal and stop being so
Sure.
slurry, I think it would have been a lot more,
Well, that's true.
a lot
But
harder of a show.
ultimately,
But
I think people saw Kamala for who she was, right?
Right.
So the trappings aside, the trappings can include the crowd, the celebrity endorsements, the ads, whatever. That only gets you so far. You see what I'm saying? So look at Jeb Bush. He had all that stuff going into 2016, right? And he ultimately didn't get a single delegate, did he? Right? Because people saw through it. But conversely, you need that context in order to grow a movement. Like, I suspect maybe you have some love for the Tea Party, right? The Tea Party was grown through paid support, right? Through the Koch brothers and all of these conservative billionaires. But if it hadn't been for their funding, you would have never heard of the Tea Party. So sometimes you need that funding and you need that, what they call critical mass, to actually grow a movement. Because think about if you go to a
But they're
restaurant.
not organic though. It's inorganic growth. Like, even to your
What's
point, like,
inorganic?
okay, people got it. I don't believe in parties anymore. I served in the military. I know we're all lies. We're
Yeah.
all just being lied to. But yeah, that's a fake party. It was a fake group of fake people that were lying and saying fake things. But because they had the support and the backing that looked like a popularity contest, it looked like they were very popular, they got pretty far with bullshit ideas and lies
I'll
and,
put it
and
this
nothing
way.
that actually came true, right? Like,
I'll put it this way. If
Yeah.
you have a lot of money, you can buy ads on TV, right?
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so what you're saying is that if you have some amount of funds, that you can essentially create a context where it looks like your product is popular, your
It's just
candidate is
advertising.
popular, your issue
Yeah.
is popular, right? So that's true. So I think your critique is kind of with American capitalism, where money can kind of create this idea of support and attention. But the thing is, ultimately, what I like to say is money, and that kind of what you want to say is like kind of inorganic
Not
support.
capitalism, politics.
Sure.
I have no problem with an advertiser or somebody trying to sell me sneakers with an advertising and marketing wallet and
You
showing
have a
me all the
problem
cool
with
kids that
somebody-
are buying the sneakers. But when it comes to actual, like, the future and dictating the money and the wars and the who we're supporting and what's going to happen with our education and things like this, manipulating those types of facts does seem morally gray.
Well, I guess what I would say
a
is
little.
that
And I'm not
it isn't-
attacking you. I'm just asking because I'm
No,
curious.
no, no. I think it's a
Yeah.
good question. But what's an example of an organic movement? Because I think if you look at anybody who attends any rally, they have some kind of reason for being there, right? So I know
Yeah.
a lot of friends in the MAGA movement, right? They go to the MAGA rallies because it's like a county fair, it's fun. You're a guy, you meet a MAGA girl, right? Like, it's kind of like going to the county fair. Like,
In my mouth.
seeing Trump is kind of like one of the attractions,
Seeing
but
the
it's like
clown. Seeing the clown. Checking
yeah,
out
it's like a
clown.
cultural event. Exactly. Well, exactly. So it's just saying, it's just like going to a BLM rally or going to
Yeah.
a lot of going to Woodstock. Was like
Yeah.
about smoking weed, not just about opposing Vietnam. So like I guess my point is people have reasons for going out and turning out to events that might not exactly align with I'm 100% in support of this cause or that cause. Now, what I will say, Brett, is that we pay people money to go out to events, but
Mm-hmm.
the money is not so good that it encourages people to abandon their convictions. And as I said, like, and I can only speak for
Interesting.
me, I can't
Yeah.
speak for other people who do what I do, but we provide people who are passionate about the cause. We're merely compensating them to go out there. Because if you look at who can go to a protest today easily, the opportunity cost is not the same for everybody. So if I'm
Right.
a wealthy retiree or I'm a college student, it doesn't cost me anything to go to a protest, right? I can just turn up whenever I want. I don't have childcare, I don't have a job, whatever. Conversely, if I am a family man who works a hourly job, my cost of going to a protest is I have to take a day off of work unpaid and I have to arrange childcare for my kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? So both of those, so is it fair that the cost of for a retiree or a college student is zero and the cost for a hourly worker might be $300 that they don't have, right? If you count the opportunity cost. So what we're doing is actually facilitating the ability of a lot of people to attend protests that or events that kind of align with their values.
What if I just wanted like all beautiful women to show up at my rally? Do you like profile people like that, or all
We
handsome men?
can
You
we can
can.
do that. Yeah,
Oh,
we
okay.
can do
Just
that.
curious.
Yeah, and it's that's done certainly. We can kind of make sure that hey, the right demographic is there.
What kind of event would you not take on as a client?
Oh, okay, well, there are a few ones, right? There are a few categories. Number one, if it's a hate group, and I'll admit that that's a subjective determination, right? So your
Certainly.
definition might not be the same as my definition, but I think we could probably all agree about, to some extent, what formulates a hate group. Number two,
Congress.
obviously, pardon me?
Congress. That's a hate group.
Right, well, I mean, and then I guess the second part would be anything that's illegal, right? So obviously we
Sure.
wouldn't do any kind of, as we've discussed. Number three, anything that would put our people at risk. So let's just say there was some event where you have Proud Boys and you have Antifa and they're going at each other, and for some reason the client wants us to be there too, right? For
Yeah.
whatever our reason is. I would probably decline that because that's going to be a very tension filled event with Proud Boys and Antifa, and I don't necessarily want our guys in the middle of that. And furthermore, because there could be strife, authorities are going to be there, and people could be tear gassed or whatever. So I wouldn't want to put our peaceful people in the mix of that.
So
So even if
how do you register your people, and how do you guarantee? I guess multifold question. Are you liable as a company for anything one of your employees does? How do you track your employees and their actions on the day?
yeah,
And then do you report in advance to authorities who would then, who are probably providing security at a lot of these events? Do you report to them and let them know, like, hey, Crowds on Demand is showing up with, 100 grandmas. We want to, how do you, what are your responsibilities legally? How do you track your people? And do you work with local law enforcement and security?
we always will work with local law enforcement, and that won't necessarily come from me or like my office, but it will come from whoever that group is. That because typically when we'll do a protest, we'll do it on behalf of a group. So we'll either create a group or have someone from the group kind of reach out and say, hey, we're going to be doing this protest. We don't. If it's going to be a really large protest, we'll inform authorities in advance. But typically, we will always work with authorities on site. And
Mm-hmm.
what I've always found is we love having a good relationship with our law enforcement partners because it's important to remind people that they're there to actually facilitate First Amendment
Are you
expression.
reading this to me? It seems like you're reading this.
No, I've just explained this to people before.
Oh,
So,
okay.
uh,
Yeah, go for it.
yeah. So I promise, no notes.
No, it's
Uh,
okay. You're allowed notes. I was just curious. It sounded,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so what we'll do is we always find that it's very effective to coordinate with law enforcement because they're there to facilitate First Amendment rights,
Yeah.
not to block it. So sometimes uh, I always find when you're very respectful but firm with law enforcement, that works, right? If you know your rights, but and kind of respectfully remind them. Like we've been in situations where we're outside some big company's headquarters protesting, and they'll ask us to move on the other side of the street, and we'll say, well, actually, we don't have to do that. Like we will coordinate with you, but we're not going to do that, unfortunately. You know.
Right.
And we can escalate that to like the chief of police office if necessary, right? Who is well aware that we have the right to do that. So
Sure.
we're like to be well aware of our rights, but to treat law enforcement with respect, because they deserve respect. I mean, I'm very pro law enforcement because ultimately they're the ones charged to protect our constitutional rights, and a vast majority of our interactions are positive. Sometimes you'll go to a suburban law enforcement department that hasn't dealt with a lot of protests, and you may have to escalate it to the chief's office because the local guys don't really understand, like, no, we have the right to be there, sorry.
Hmm.
So that can be a little tense, but in big cities, we've never had any issues. Um,
Interesting.
um, and as pertains to our people, we always try to. Our job is to get peaceful, respectful, law-abiding people, exclusively. And we've never had an incident in 13 years, and that's due to our kind of diligent work there.
Nice. Who's dropping off the pallets of bricks?
Well, not us. Not
I'm not
us.
accusing you. I was just asking in line. Seems like your
Uh,
line of business, like you might know the inside. Who's doing
well,
that?
look, I have some theories, of course, but it's important for legal reasons that I don't name anybody on
I
air,
understand.
where I don't have evidence. But what's important, though, is that there are these people who are purchasing this, right?
Hmm.
It was not us, but people who are purchasing bricks. You saw tents, right? Tent encampments. You saw tactical gear being distributed on the
They all
streets
have
of
the
Los
same
Angeles,
sign. They all have the same
right?
clothes. They all have the
These are
same
expensive.
shoes. Like I was in the military, I look for these things.
Yeah.
Bulk
Well,
buys. Anything bulk buy.
correct, and of course, there's nothing illegal about all having the same shoes, clothes, or signs, right? That's
But the
completely
bricks is
allowed.
illegal.
Pardon me.
But the bricks
The
are
bricks are
illegal.
illegal, and the tactical gear, while not expressly illegal, if you're bringing tactical gear
Is
to a protest,
insightful.
that
Yeah.
that suggests that your goals are nefarious. Now, that's
Right.
not proof, but it suggests. So when whoever is buying this tactical gear is clearly looking for an escalation, right? They're
Right.
not looking for peace, in my opinion. So it's
Nice.
a concern, and I want to lead a committee to actually get to the bottom of it. But my one condition to the government is that it be completely nonpartisan, and I do not want to work for the Republican-led law enforcement or Democrats. Right?
Hmm.
I think we had the J6 committee, which was completely a Democratic witch hunt, and I think that now you have Republican committees that are Republican witch hunts. I'm not interested in being anyone's toy. I'm interested in leading a nonpartisan, bipartisan committee that has carte blanche to look into this stuff, and I promise you I will get to the root of it, but I will not be supervised by politicized law enforcement.
Well, let me ask you this then, without you actually naming names, because I don't want to paint you in a corner.
Yeah.
But you've worked with large crowds. You're familiar with crowds. You're familiar with events
Yes.
and security. You've just said that you work with law enforcement at these events. When it comes to like the Butler shooting
Yeah.
or Charlie Kirk getting executed at these large events in front of mass crowds of people, what do you think happened there? Why do you think we don't know anything about and none of the stories line up?
Yeah.
You think we're being kept in the dark from things that are pretty obvious? Because it would seem, just from my standpoint, that there's a lot of things that are being withheld. What's your personal opinion on this? These large event attacks now.
Yeah, well, I think it's very clear that there's a lot being withheld. Now, the
Yeah.
question is that because there are a few reasons, right? So the fact that the authorities are withholding information could be a sign that it doesn't comport with the narrative, the official narrative, right? Because it could. So there are a few reasons that they cover up, right? First, it's a CYA, cover their ass because they
Right.
fucked up. Sorry for my language, and they don't want people to know that they fucked up. So that's
Right.
sort of a non-conspiratorial thing, of basically we fucked up, we should have known, and we should have done a better job, and we don't want people to know how badly we fucked up, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, the narrative does not comport with what we say it is, right? So the Republican FBI wants to label the Charlie Kirk matter to say, oh well, that's this guy and his transgender lover or whatever who did all this, right? Well, it's like, well, is that really the story, or is that just the story that comports with your narratives that allows you to then say, well, this to tar the left and say, oh, this is a left-wing thing rather than something from the right or something else. The third is obviously sort of the Candace Owens sort of massive conspiracy from all these places. Now, which is it, or is it a combination? I can't speak to that because the evidence is not there. Now, it's interesting. I was just having breakfast with someone this morning and saying what I actually support is the idea of a committee. I'm happy to lead this one too. It's called the Conspiracy Theory Committee that has carte blanche to explore all the conspiracy theories. JFK assassination, did 9/11? How did that go down? COVID, 2020 election. Russiagate, like everything, but we have a carte blanche and can subpoena and kind of actually distinguish, because a lot of these conspiracy theories might be true and a lot of them might be false, but it's actually it's the reason why they fester is because of the opacity of it, right? When things are opaque, conspiracy theories are allowed to fester because people's only explanation is this is a conspiracy. I mean, Epstein files, the Epstein suicide, right? Like, all of these things deserve to be examined, but when the government doesn't allow you to examine it, right? Like the 9/11 Commission was like, had a budget of like $5 million, which is basically nothing to look into all of this stuff, right? That's where conspiracy theories fester. So maybe there's something to it. Maybe there isn't, but without transparency, we won't actually know these answers. So then all of these conspiracy theories can just fester and fester and build and build, and that's actually the problem. So I want to actually get to the bottom of these things, but the only way to do it is to actually have a lot more transparency from the government.
Yeah, I mean, it's the chicken and the egg dilemma that we're living in, right? I mean, in order to get the answers of the things that have affected our nation, we have to get it from the government, who has been the greatest perpetrator in covering up these mass events.
Right. So why would they give you?
They give you something they've been spending their time covering up? That's right.
But that's the question: is we can't always determine, is it option A, B, or C, because when the government won't tell you everything, because if it's favorable to them, they're going to tell you everything, right? So assume that if they're not telling you everything, it's not favorable to them. I mean, maybe to some extent there's like a sources and methods issue where but in general, it's because they fucked up, because it doesn't comport with their narratives, or because there might be a grand conspiracy theory. But we can't determine which one. Now, the Butler matter seems more of like right? It seems like more like they fucked up because they didn't provide adequate security on site, and there were a lot of lapses, right? But we don't know that until more information is revealed, right?
Well, we do know that the term conspiracy theory was actually created by the CIA to turn people off from thinking that JFK was murdered by the CIA, which they did a data dump 6 months ago and released it and said, yeah, we had something to do with it, shut the fuck up. So we definitely know that is a fact. But
that's true.
I mean, we got about 10 minutes left. I've been really, I really appreciate your time. You've been gracious with it. I know you have a heart out. We talked about earlier, but I want to give you, a few minutes to close out with anything that you would like to say, or like what you think people should be doing, because I talk to people, and I've talked to a lot of important people and a lot of regular people, and basically across the board everybody has lost 100% faith in anything government. And protesting is definitely one way, but we've seen protests that yield no results. And our country is 37. Oh, wait, what time is it? Oh, it's $38 trillion in debt, because it's like $100,000 every second, and we're collapsing. We're in like 8 wars all over the world. I mean, Where do you think we're going? Where do you think we are? And what's your last advice for people in America?
Well, I think that what you've kind of correctly identified as some macro issues, right? Of here are a lot of the challenges that we're facing, right?
Right.
And we don't have faith in the government, but I think we have more faith in. I guess I have a couple kind of points to that. Is
Please.
you say that we have no faith in the government, but we have more faith in the government than we think, right? Like I am going out on the road, which is a government road, and I'm driving on the road. I clearly have some degree of faith that that road will be somewhat safe for my use. I will. I don't know whether you drink tap water or bottled water. I mostly drink bottled, but I'll drink tap water. Maybe you don't. That's the government's water, right? So,
I know what's in it, bro. I got a microscope. Don't drink it for your own good.
using the government back.
Just buy a microscope. Just buy a microscope. That's all I gotta say. Buy a microscope. Do it on your own. Do it on your own.
I think that our government has failed us significantly, and I'm not defending that. But I
Yeah.
guess my kind of challenge is like I've been to Lebanon, right? And
Yeah.
Lebanon is a country that actually has no government, no functional government, right? If you want power, you got to bribe the power company. If you want
Afghanistan
water,
doesn't have a government. Iraq, they had, yeah, sure.
you've got to have your own generator. You've got to have your
Yeah.
own. You can't trust that the construction is safe. You have to have your own engineers, your own people, because you can't trust anything because there's no government that's enforcing even the basic standards. And I think what I'm saying is maybe you have less faith than most, but you actually have more. Like when you go to a restaurant in America, you're kind of putting faith in the local food inspectors to some degree. Right, so maybe
Everything comes from Cisco. So yeah,
Right.
again, you're eating GMO garbage and poison and glyphosate and nanotech. Yeah.
So
So
I think the government.
and I just want to also say my lack of faith in government comes from one word, and that's democide, and that's the number one killer of the number one without question, bar none, killer of humans throughout the history of time.
And
The
what
number
is
one
that?
killer of all time is democide.
And what is that? I forgive me.
Governments killing their people.
Wow. Yeah.
Number one killer of all time, hands down, bar none, no questions asked. So,
Well, look,
but
I
anyway,
think-
continue. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I want to give you the last word. Go ahead.
Totally fine. Well, look, so I understand people's lack of faith in the government, and I
Yeah.
think that the reality is that there are certain structures in the government that are just not set up to help ordinary people make their lives better. But what you will see is you'll see what is your faith in local government is much better than your faith in national government because people know their local officials.
right.
You may know your local mayor, your city council, and you may live nearby them, and you may see them working hard.
Well, they're
to-
accountable to you. When
They're
they
accountable.
steal, when they lie, when they cheat, when they murder, when they hurt someone, it's
Well,
like
like you can
right down
see
the
it,
street. It's not thousands of miles away, protected by guys with guns and militaries and all that.
That's correct. It's more diffuse. So whereas what our federal government is doing is so unaccountable, like we can see if our city council member buys a new Mercedes that from unexplained sources,
Right.
and we can say, hey, what's up with this?
So it's accountability.
So it's
you
accountability.
trust things that you can account that are
Whereas
accountable
we
to you.
can't see, oh, has this congressman or is this cabinet secretary made $100 million in cryptocurrency through some shady network, right? Like we don't see that. It's diffuse, right? So as a result, we have more skepticism, and that should be more skepticism. Now,
Right.
what is the way forward, right? So I guess the challenge is my point with Lebanon is the way forward is not no government because Lebanon has no government and it's worse than us, right? The solution is having a government that feels more accountable and throwing people out who are not serving us and who are just giving lip service, because what a lot of our officials do on the right and on the left is lip service. And the two groups that I think have been most mistreated in America are Black Americans and rural Americans. Why? Because they vote 80 to 90% for one political party, right? Rural America votes Republican no matter what, right? Black America votes Democrat no matter what, 80, 90%. It's insane. And go to a black neighborhood, right? They don't own anything. Their crime is high. Public services are terrible, right? Go to rural America. They got fentanyl
Same
crisis,
thing. Same problems.
meth crisis, right? The nicest building in most rural counties is the local hospital where people go to get treatment for the fentanyl or to get prescribed more oxy, right? So I'm like, so why are the people in the worst regions, right, the most underserved regions, the ones who are voting 80, 90% for the people who keep fucking them over, right? So, like,
Why? Why is that?
Because
Why do you think that? They're
I-
lied to
it-
the most?
Because my question is, like, if you look at historic swing states, now Florida is no longer a swing state, but it historically has been. But the wealthiest areas in the country are often swing regions, right? Like
Yeah.
Florida, like Broward County, Florida, extreme where Palm
know where that
Beach
is.
and Fort Lauderdale, right?
Yeah,
Very
been
wealthy
there.
county, very mixed, right? Because they're smart. They're seeing who's doing more for us and who's not. If you fuck them over, they will fuck you over, right? Same thing with Scottsdale,
Because they're
Arizona.
Haitians. They'll kill your ass. Never mind.
Right,
I
Scottsdale,
know a bunch
Arizona.
of Browards. Yeah, that's funny.
Orange County, California,
Yeah.
right? The rich people are savvy with who they vote for. They'll decide if they feel that the Republican is not serving them, they'll vote Democrat. If they feel the Democrat is not serving them, they'll vote
Yeah.
Republican. So if the rich people are being savvy with who they vote for, St. Highland Park, Dallas, right? So I'm just naming more of the wealthiest regions are actually
Right.
swing regions. So why is it that the poor people keep voting like lemmings for the same person who fucks them over each time?
Why though? Because they're lied to? Why do you think that? Why do you think that they're the most manipulated?
Well, I think that they are people who, and I don't want to call them stupid because many poor people are not at all stupid. So it's
No,
that
no, yeah.
they may have less access to information and they may
That's right.
believe what they're told a little too. And a lot of people are just will stop participating, number one. So their voter turnout rate is lower. But my point is, what if all of a sudden rural Americans said, fuck you, Republicans, I'm going to vote Democrat because I want something different? And what if black Americans said, fuck you, Democrats, I'm voting Republican because I want something different? I bet that would be a wake-up call to say, let's improve the station of black America, let's improve the station of rural America, right?
I think we just end up with the same problems. I don't.
I,
you know,
well,
but
I
that's just
think
me.
that accountability is the key. To me,
Yeah.
accountability is the key.
100%.
Because rich people are very good at holding people accountable, and poor people are not. I think that's the reality. You know,
I think it's more of a means. I think the
I've worked with a
wealthy,
lot of
and like just like the
billionaires.
government has a means to control your $600 transaction, but the $2 billion in gold that Stacey Abrams stole is gone.
Well,
And
look-
Ilhan Omar's worth $30 million because she's smarter than you. That's why. She's smarter than you. She has a better education than you. That's why
Well,
Ilhan
look,
Omar's worth 30 million, right?
really-
That's what I'm saying. The rich and the wealthy, it's not an education thing. I think it's just a means thing. They have the backing to, oppress. That's the whole point.
Well, and billionaires are also extremely they're very savvy, smart people. That's how they became billionaires, and they're very good at manipulating the system to their advantage, right? And
Yeah.
I know I've worked with a lot of billionaire clients, and they're extremely frugal. You know what I mean? And
Does crowd on demand take any tax subsidies?
no, like what do you mean tax? Wait,
Well, I mean,
what-
like the richest man in the world owns Tesla, but he takes $8 billion a year. Tesla takes $8 billion a year from taxes to Tesla to keep it in operation.
You don't
So then the
receive
richest man in the
any money.
world takes his salary from Tesla and claims he's the richest man in the world when all he did was just take $8 billion of your tax dollars. So every year, the richest man in the world just keeps getting paid from
Well,
your money.
we don't work for the federal government. At least we haven't. So
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that you guys were on the level. I don't want to hear any kickback.
We are very much on the level. My
Good.
goal is to actually be a force for the underdog, and the thing is,
I love
because here's the thing, and this is a good kind of finishing thought for
Yeah.
your listeners is that if you have billions of dollars and want to control an industry, you can hire lobbyists, lawyers, attorneys, right? Everything, right? To make it impossible to compete with you. That's what big tech has done. That was big pharma has done. Protest is actually a way that you can actually, for a lot less money, create a movement and resist. So actually,
Yeah.
we're actually a force of democracy and a force for the underdog, and that's kind of how I like it. Now, it's not to say we haven't worked for large industries, but we've worked for the crypto industry against the banking industry, for example, right? Because the crypto has been the underdog. So we have worked for medium industries against large industries to create more competition, and that's something I'm really proud of.
Good. Well, I like it, man. I like it. Thanks for letting me grill you and try to get to the bottom here. And I appreciate your time. Anything else you want to add? Where can people come and find you? Where can people, if they want to just support you or they want to get a crowd, can I just get like a group of people that follow me around and cheer for me?
Why not?
Like
Yeah, we do that. We don't do it as much as we did when we started the
okay.
company, but yeah, crowdsondemand.com or on Twitter at CEO Adam Swart.
Nice. Awesome, dude. Well, I
Sure, thank
appreciate it,
you.
Adam. Thank you very much. And let's do this again sometime, man. I'd love
We
to
will.
continue talking about the fall of Western society.
Yeah, sure.
That's good.
Yeah, why not? All
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, citizen, you heard it first from Adam. You need a crowd. You know where to go. Stay strong, seek the truth, and we'll talk to you next time. Take
Thanks,
it
Brett.
easy.